Greetings, and there's nobody here but me, and that's fine. I just need to talk about a few things today. Let me just start with quoting one of my favorite quotes because it's so true. It's a Dostoevsky quote inside every cop is a secret criminal. And I believe that. I believe that's very true when talking of some religious groups. I think it's very true when talking about Stephen Anderson. Stephen Anderson of Faithful Word Baptist Church, the Pope of the new IFB. If you know who I am, I'm Suzanne Tidkemeier. I used to write for a place called Pathos, a column called No Longer Quivering, that dealt with the evangelical quiverful world and the larger non-denominational evangelical world, and some of the things that happen there that are just completely, totally insane, like this and like this last couple of weeks. These are my opinions. Don't be rude to each other or me, or I will go ahead and move you to Jerks for Jesus. Okay, and I'm still doing the same thing at Substack. My Substack is with Strange Fire, which is the name of my book that I've written about my time in my old church, which started out as a sweet little country church and ended up going to Crazy Town. Let me just throw that one out there. And I got endless amusement over some of the Crazy Town behavior, and I still am. It's more of a comedy almost. So this is not a comedy, what I have to talk about today. What I have to talk about today, I gotta spell it out because YouTube is problematic about what they will let you talk about and not talk about, which has gotta be the silliest thing on the planet. Because I think if you mark your videos for adults only, that they should allow you to say the words you wanna say, the adult words, and I'm not even talking about curse words. I'm talking about the National Socialist Party of Germany back in the 30s and 40s, the NAZI. Yes. Those people. Hey, I am so fed up right now, Heidi, with everything they're saying and doing. And every time I think, yeah, I'm done with this, I'm going to move along to something and someone else. Maybe even talk about living here in Costa Rica because there's a lot to discuss there. But then I turned around and I start doing a little reading, I follow a rabbit hole, and I end up someplace where I really don't want to be. And I'm looking at it going, really? Did we fight the war to defeat the? I did not see that coming. The NAZIS? Did we not fight a war to end that? Why is this even tolerated? Okay, so I knew that Isaac had those kind of leanings. And I was a little bit willing to sort of overlook that because of his youth. Okay. Why do I say that? Well, heck, when I went off to college, I actually got involved with a bunch of those people for like a month or so, and I realized how incredibly insane they were and what their belief system was all about. It was like, talk to the hand, you're not talking to me. So it's not an uncommon thing to be involved in when you're a young person and to be involved in bizarre ideological fights. I see that he is fighting with people right now about the whole war in the Ukraine with Russia. And I almost never speak about that here because, frankly, I'm not educated enough. That's not my specialty. I have a dear friend, John O. Pierce, that he does that. He has a channel where that's all he does is talk about that. I'll link that in my description when I'm done here. John O does a good job with that, but that's John O's passion. That's not mine, even though I do have to hear the husband ramble and rant about war. That's his big issue, not mine. Okay. So this morning I got up, somebody linked me to something, that linked me to something else, that linked me to something else, and here we are. And the piece of artwork I used in the beginning of this is called Hiding from the NAZIS. It's by an artist by the name of Johann Kunst. And I found that in Review Art magazine after searching. And I just, to this day, cannot believe that I'm seeing this again. That I'm seeing these people that are doing and saying these awful things all the time. And like I said, while I'm willing to look at Isaac and say, yeah, you're just young, and you've been raised in a hate group, because Stephen Anderson is defined and is listed as a hate group by the Southern Poverty Law Center and a few federal agencies. So that he is a hate group. And when you plant a garden of hate, weird stuff grows. Here's what I did not expect. I've seen videos by a pile of pastors who were in IFB, who've now left, that are ranting about Stephen Anderson, who are all NAZIS. Once I started looking into them and started reading about what they believed and how they called the members of the LGBTQ community all kinds of filthy names and derogatory names, and they're throwing shade at Anderson for his sins, and God knows he has them. We all have them. That's what the blood of Jesus is for. Um, I was just blown away, and I was blown away by one of them saying that only Anderson offers a grace-based, not works-based theology. And what I mean by that is once saved, always saved. Where have you been all these years, dude? My dude, that is very common in parts of evangelicalism. That's part of evangelicalism I carried out that is I'm still good with. Grace-based faith. God knows we can't earn it. We can't build that stairway to heaven. We can't put our pennies aside for that. The only way any of us ever come to a full knowledge of Christ, I believe, is because of the free gift of faith. And it's a free gift. You don't have to earn it. You don't have to keep proving yourself. And that's where I think that this pastor has it wrong about Anderson. I think Anderson teaches the theology, once saved, always saved. But here you got to defend your pastor in every circumstance, everything. You got to say all these wonderful things about him. Only he can conduit you to God. Like with the old IBLP Bill Gothard graphic of umbrellas. God, Jesus, father, husband, wife, and kids. That puts the father, husband as the conduit to God for the women and children, which is simply not true. That's not it at all. Anybody can come, no matter what your age, no matter what circumstance you're in, anybody can come. The table is open. Grace is for everyone. But according to these guys, not so. So they're always talking about NAZIS theology without actually using the word. Isaac at least will embrace that word compared to the others. But everybody running away from Anderson and throwing rocks at him from the new IFB and unfriending, except for one place. Pastor Alvarez at Pure Word seems like he's a decent guy, and there are very few decent guys in this group. That's all I'm going to say about that. So that's why I started quoting Dostoevsky at the beginning, because I really think that a lot of these groups where they get off kilter, one of the things that happens with them is while they're throwing rocks, the gay community, at abusive people, at various groups they're throwing rocks at, they're actually maybe that's their secret sin or their secret longing. So many times when I see these guys defend what is masculine or not, and one of the articles that I pulled up that was old about Pastor Anderson that I'd written about at NLQ was when he was throwing shade at pastors who wore polka dot shirts and skinny jeans. Fashion, that was just a blamping time. They don't understand that there are very few things in this world they're permanent. There's a lot of transitory things. So many things are transitory, which is why I don't sweat a lot of stuff because a lot of stuff happens. It is what it is. And breathe in, breathe out, move on, to quote the immortal Jimmy Buffett, which means you don't really have to get agitated about too much of this stuff. It is what it is. That's another favorite saying of mine. I must say that 100 times a day here. My husband hears me say it because he's like, Costa Ricans, blah, 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 blah. It's like, look, it is what it is. It's their culture. They have that thing where it's their culture and they can say, do whatever they want. They can order their culture however they want. It doesn't have to be set up for your approval. So many times I've seen that. And white males in America are the worst about being entitled. Not all of them, some of them. And I really see a lot of what's going on with Anderson and them as being entitled. Can you imagine if women of color embraced that kind of nonsense that a lot of them are? Especially the NAZIS, can't spell, theology, but flipped it on script against white males. Can you imagine how they would lose their minds? So all of them throwing rocks at him are doing this. They're not much better. I think the only thing we can really do is say, bless your heart when we encounter them. Breathe in, breathe out, move on. Because attacking them is counterproductive. You want them to come to a saving knowledge of grace, saving knowledge of all this. And we can't do that if we're throwing rocks at each other and we're not approaching the truth and love. And that's really hard because I know I really want to throw rocks at various people and have realized that I can't do that. Ironically, there's a different group that are not religious based at all. They're trying to make me apologize right now to somebody because I picked up some wrong information from a friend and had said, hey, stop doing this to another friend who flipped out, by the way, lost his damn mind, who spent the last year attacking me, which is kind of interesting to watch. Whenever someone demonizes you have to at least sit and listen to what they're saying and then formulate your opinion whether you think they're wrong or not. Anderson is not even bothering to think about that at all. He's like, I am straight ahead. I am right. I am right. You were wrong. Blah, blah, blah. Well, if you aren't at least thinking about what people say, even if you've told them off and said, no, I don't want to talk to you at all about that right now, it behooves you to actually reflect on what they've said, to reflect on it and then decide, well, there might be something to what they're saying, or to say, no, there's absolutely nothing in what they're saying. Or, yes, they're 100% right. I need to do this. And usually the truth is somewhere between the two diametrically opposed poles. Usually the truth is in the middle. That's why I like to say I'm right down the middle on a lot of things because a lot of times there's some validity in side A and side B. But when you have theology that calls for the death of other people, after proclaiming God's word that says that you have to love everybody, that everybody's a child of God. So which is it? Is everybody a child of God, or are there only a few people who are children of God and everybody else is heathens that you can kill? Which is it? That confuses me when they do that. I'm kind of like, what kind of theological, emotional twister must you be doing to jump into that, to jump from that space to that other space? Because I'm not getting it at all. So I posted a piece from Isaac earlier. Apparently, Pastor Alvarez of Pure Words Baptist is refusing to file a police report against Jonathan Shelley stealing the money from the church, actually. So if I were a member of Pure Words Baptist, I would be livid right now. You have to call the police. Isaac has cobbled together information if you want to call the police, what to say, and ask them to investigate. Now, I don't have a lot of faith in the Houston Police Department because they're like other police departments in the US. Not all of them, but some of them are fighting a crime wave and a lot of allegations at the same time. And they're trying to, stem this crime wave going on in their cities and dealing with the fact that they're understaffed and overburdened. I've always been in favor of defunding the police to the point where you take some of their duties away. You don't send them on domestic calls. You don't send them on drug calls at all. You send social workers. You send drug rehabilitation counselors. You take that off the plate and let them literally just be law enforcement. So anyway, Isaac wants everyone to call the Houston Police Department and demand they do an investigation of Pure Words Baptist, what happened with the money. And here's the other thing. I'm going to do a little digging today and over the next few days and see what the 501c3 status is of all these places. If this is ongoing and it's wrong, it's easy to report this to the IRS and ask them to take a look, see what's going on. And once you have the IRS in your back pocket looking at your nonsense, it's not going to go very well for any of the guys who had their hands in the till when they weren't supposed to. Money is one of the biggest things that many churches stumble with, money and politics. And I am not a big fan of churches mixing politics with religion. It's one thing if you want to preach about Christians should be aware of X, Y, and Z and think carefully when they vote. That's one thing. But when you start suggesting certain parties are the only way or that you have to vote a certain way, that's all kinds of wrong. I remember in my old quasi-fundamentalist, quasi-evangelical church, every political season, we would get these pamphlets in our seats and the pews from Intercessors for America. And I always appreciated these because they didn't tell you how to vote. They didn't say you must vote this way. What they did was they took the views of all the candidates, they did a grid, and they showed you where the candidates fell on certain things. And it was easy to spot the NAZIAS. I did not see that coming. And the ones that were super toxic. And I did appreciate that. But I don't appreciate when they tell you to vote a certain way. That's really between you and the ballot box as to how you're gonna vote. I feel that more strongly this year than ever before. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start putting together also a list of all the churches that have left recently, the new IFB, because Anderson abusing his wife and kids is apparently the fridge too far for some of these guys. Some of these guys that promote the National Socialism thing, it's too far. I'm not surprised by Isaac's belief system with his dad's trash talk and his mom's background in Eastern Europe. She's got a lot of anger about the US bombing Europe in World War II. I know she does. I've seen that with her. And I agree, bombing was not a good thing, but at the same time, what was going on in Europe was so incredibly evil. There was no way to wipe that out short of completely destroying the NAZIS. And we had to do that with bombs, and unfortunately, innocent people got caught in the mix. There was a video I was watching last night, late last night, when I was trying to go to bed. I was listening to it, actually, I wasn't watching, by one of my favorite historians. And he was talking about how history is taught in the US versus around the world, including Europe, about World War II. Because one of the things that happened post World War II in Germany and not in the Eastern Bloc countries is they were forced to teach it from an American centric point of view. Well, of course, in the Eastern European Bloc countries, they taught it how the Soviets wanted it taught because it was still under Soviet control at that time. Right. She equates us to what the H man did in the camps. Yeah, she does. I've seen that. And it was just like, are you kidding me? I don't see how anybody could ever tour Dachau or Auschwitz. And that is their conclusion? No. In fact, I will say this, something she probably doesn't even realize is that post World War II, the US, Great Britain, France, maybe? I'm trying to think. I can't remember. It was late last night. Gave said, let's give the Soviet Union, Russia, a chance to see how they govern this part of Germany because they did split up Germany. My husband is former military intelligence. We lived in Germany. We lived in a town called Fulda that was right up against the wall, the Fulda Gap. Fulda Gap, right up against some missile bases and various other things. And I worked for the USO. I got to see a lot of things from a behind the scenes sort of perspective that the average military wife didn't. And we were there for reasons. It was serious. I remember one time I was at the border bringing, believe it or not, McDonald's hamburgers out to the guys at the border because one of the main objectives of the USO is to give soldiers and their families a little taste of home, help them survive in a place that they don't know much about. And I was a little bit different than a lot of the other military wives because I was a little tiny bit older. My husband and I married when I was late mid-20s, and we were there, I was my late 20s. So I was up there bringing these hamburgers, and there were East German and American helicopters on either side of the border doing some weird maneuvers. I don't even remember. The Soviet one, the East German one, crash landed right up against where the border was. And it was the craziest thing I had ever seen because, okay, crash, it's bad enough. The East Germans, the Soviets, they showed up. They put fence around the crash. Went so far as to scrape up every evidence, even of the dirt of anything happening. And 4 hours later, it was like it had never happened. You could look at it. They went to some pretty extreme lengths to pretend it never happened. So you have to understand with Sue, she was raised in a society that said that the US was the evil Satan, okay? And where a lot of their own history was hidden from them, and a lot of things that was hidden as that disappeared helicopter. I mean, it was impressive. I'd never seen anything like that. But if you were on her side, you would never see that sort of thing. So I don't doubt that was one of the reasons why Stephen was initially attracted to her because she was from that part of the world. He probably thought he could get a more subservient wife who would treat him better, would be more traditional, would cook, like a lot of these guys who are afraid of women that listen to me here, not hire, but buy these mail order bride types from the former Soviet Union, from Russia, from Asia, from all over the place, thinking that they're getting a traditional stay-at-home mother wife. And once they get to the States, it doesn't quite work out that way. All you have to do is watch the show 90 Day Fiancé, which is my daughter's guilty pleasure that I sometimes watch with her when I'm around her, to see that these things don't work out like that as well as these guys seem to think it will. So I believe Stephen targeted Zoo. He targeted her and said, "Okay, this is the one and this is why." He basically crash landed in her life and pestered, hectored her until she agreed to marry him in very short order. I have to go back and look. Anderson used to have a blog where he had like the 20 parts of his courtship marriage story to Susanna. And it was pretty crazy, some of it. I was reading that going back when I was writing for NLQ because he just took over. He took over everything. He's not one of these people that handles pushback or resistance in any way. He immediately demonizes whoever it is. I mean, just look at the prayers that he's given since this crap has gone down. He hasn't apologized. He hasn't anything. He's just called for the punishment of his detractors. Oh my, lions and tigers and bears. Oh my. And that just makes him a weak little man whistling in the woods as far as I'm concerned. One of these escaped pastors that's still an NAZIS was talking about that on his website the other day about narcissism and little man syndrome. And what he got wrong, and what a lot of people get wrong, is that these guys that are that way, that are all controlling and have to be on top, that are clearly narcissistic, have narcissistic tendencies, they aren't the most, they are people with the best self esteem. They have very low self esteem. Hey, Dean. Hey, Pastor Dean. And they have very low self esteem. So that the way that they handle it, because they have narcissistic tendencies, is they refuse to consider that anybody else would ever be right. Only they and their theology and their anything is right. And if you stay stuck in that state, no one confronts you and you don't think deeply about what you're doing. And most narcissists will not think deeply about what they're doing. And most people with the narcissistic tendencies won't do that. They won't do the work. They just want an echo chamber. And the people in their echo chamber don't grow either because those of us who have been Christians for quite a while realize that if your Christianity remains the same through the years, if it remains stagnant, you don't. That's a good question. Let me answer that in a sec. Um, if you don't change and grow, you just stagnate. One personal question. You say you escaped to Costa Rica to get away from the system. Yes and no. It was my husband's dream to come here. Our entire marriage, we always joked about when we retired, we were going to move to the beach. Wasn't specified which beach or even what country, and open in what he calls a Le Turista trap. Well, we're here now, and we didn't have to open a business with that's not even a consideration for us. But here's the thing, okay? Costa Rica was his dream more than it was ever mine. We spent 3 months there in 2020. Good for you. It is a different place. And it was not my dream, it was his. So he drug me here on vacation because he knows I'm all about the beach. If I'm not if I don't have the sand under my feet, the waves washing over my feet, and the sunshine shining on me, I'm not happy. I have always, like, been countdown to beach time girl, and living in Virginia, oh, you hated it. Ugh, it's not for everybody. Imma tell you about that in a second too. If I have that, I'm the happiest gal on the planet. I'm a mile and a half from the Pacific, so it worked out for us. The reason that we came was because of him. I said at the time, I said, "Yeah, I'll go on this adventure with you. Let's see where we go with this." We started a place called Copa in the Costa Rican, Central Valley in the mountains, north of San Ysidro General and, Dominical. We were there for 4 months while he taught at a school, an English school, and then when his term was up, we went to Tamarindo, Costa Rica. I would have picked another town because I don't like Panama City Beach and places like that, and Tamarindo is the overseas version of Panama City Beach. Fortunately for me, we live closer to Playa Grande, which is a huge natural beach that is a national park. All kinds of wildlife, and you know me, I love animals, I'm an animal person. So I don't know very many places you could live where wild parrots come down and eat your fruit, quadamundis come up over the wall, and big parrots come to eat your grapefruit. So for me, this place is paradise in a lot of ways. For a lot of Americans, it's not. Lake Arnaud, I'm very familiar with that because I have a friend that owns a hotel up there. So when we need to escape from the beach, we go to Lake Arnaud. We've talked about buying another house up there and just going between the 2 all the time, but we haven't done that. Arnaud is also rather touristy. So it's not for everybody. The problem with Costa Rica is most Americans get here and think that it's gonna be all beach all the time, it's gonna be just like their vacation was, and it is not. It is not at all like your vacation because you have to start living here, dealing with Tico culture. It's very different than living in a resort area. I mean, being in a resort and doing all this resort things. Very different. I've managed to, make the switch without too much hassle. I think having lived overseas made a difference for me. I'd lived there before. Rain off the hook. Yep. Crime off the hook. Well, that depends upon where you are. Everybody lives in cages. Well, there's that. I don't live in a cage. I have a 10-foot high concrete wall with glass at the top. That's why you see most of Americans will move to gated communities here because of that. There's petty crime and they steal stuff mostly. And there's drug crime, but that's everywhere. The crime levels where I live are a lot less than they were where I lived in DC. I mean, in Washington, Virginia, right up against Washington, DC. Sort of kind of like that, except that I'm sitting on an acre. So if it's a fort, it's a big fort with multiple buildings. I have a house and a guest house. I don't touch the guest house. That is just for my family when they come and friends. I thought about doing an Airbnb, but looking at the reality of that, I decided I didn't wanna work that hard. That's like work, and I'm done with work here now. So that's another thing about Anderson that makes me crazy is he hops around the world doing soul winning trips and planting these churches. I heard from somebody who was involved with one of the churches in Africa, and it is a story that I'm unpacking that one slowly because there's so many different layers to the story with Anderson, even to his NAZIAIS thing, that it is it's like peeling the world's most massive onion to get what's really going on at the center. Like I said, I'm pretty sure what's going on at the center is super low self-esteem that's driving the boat, and that's unfortunate. When he was picked up for the psych hold, I was hoping that they would diagnose him with some sort of mental illness because that would make sense, but I don't think that that happened at all. Possibly he fought them and wouldn't cooperate and they couldn't do anything, which happens. Mm. So we are gonna keep an eye, and I'm still gonna be looking and writing and thinking about it. And, oh, Deborah, one last thing about that rain. I am watching one of the things I do is I look at the, Costa Rican tourism sites with the boards on, like, Facebook and whatever, and one of the most common things I hear is people complaining about the rain, okay? I live in Guanacaste. Half the year here is a desert, not a drop of rain falls, beautiful sunshine. The other half of the year, it rains a lot. Most of the time, it's not a big deal as long as you're home by about 4 o'clock, you're not gonna get rained on, except for right now. Right now is the thick of rainy season, and people are piling on complaining about how it rained the whole time, so the hardest part of rainy season, if you ever come here, is September, October. It's just unbelievable. There are days when it will rain the entire damn day, and you're sitting there. If you're like me, you're sitting here with your ebook reading because there's not a whole lot you could do when it rains like that. And we don't dirty up the house enough for me to be cleaning it every damn day. So there we go. October, November, December, January. January should have been nice, except that I'm going to say that December and January, it will still rain in R&all. It will be unrainy here. It'll be glittering sunshine, but R&all, it'll be raining. And this year, they had some pretty tough rains at Arnold because we went there during the height of their part of the rainy season, and we were driving around Lake Arnold, which I know you know that road that's like nothing but switchbacks. It goes all the way around the lake. And we stopped 6 different times because there was either a significant mudslide or there were trees across the road, and it really impeded travel. It was awful. I know one thing, I won't be going back there in, when was I there? Was it July? June or July. I won't be going back there in that time frame because it was pretty bad. It was awful. He wasn't on hold long enough for anything positive to come from it. That's exactly right. You have to be on that hold, usually a good week before they can do anything close to diagnosis if he hasn't received a diagnosis outside of them talking to him. And that's not happened. And that's really unfortunate because I believe that if Stephen had had proper psychiatric treatment when he was young, if his parents had realized that this was a problem, we might be in a totally different place and this thing wouldn't even exist. I did have a blast. I spent holidays with Ticos. You're doing it right when you're doing that. The Ticos are wonderful people, very wonderful. Which makes me fear for them if Stephen comes to Costa Rica to do one of his soul winning trips because they're such wonderful people. They're kind. They're generous to a fault. I really love the Ticos here, and I have a lot of Tico friends. And the diverse group of retirees from all over the world. Yep, there are a lot of us here. It's a lot cheaper here in a lot of ways. Gasoline, electricity, no. Buying a car, no. But a lot of other things are much cheaper. And we have enjoyed our life here. I don't want to see an Anderson show up and spoil it all for us. It's bad enough that we have missionary Baptists here, and I've got to experience firsthand some of the nonsense that they do, especially at my old church that we went to here, where I ended up having to leave because of my mastocytosis. I have some very severe allergies. One of them is dog dander. I can play with parrots all day, and their feather dust doesn't bother me. Pet every cat in Costa Rica, and I'm not bothered. Put me in the room with a poodle, and I am going to anaphylaxis every time. I don't know what it is about their coats, but it's bad. And the church told me that they would prioritize the visitor's emotional support animal over myself as a member of worship team. And I was pretty outraged, and I've had to realize there are no safe churches for me here, except for the Catholic Church. And there's not a English-speaking Catholic church where I would go. There's not a Methodist church either where I would go. So there you go. Not very diverse as far as churches here where I live. It's pretty rural. It's the funny thing about living near Tamarindo is Tamarindo is a sleepy little backwater most of the year, except for tourist season. Then it turns into this huge version of Panama City Beach. And you're dodging drunken gringos left, right, and center, and it's pretty weird. So we don't have quite the shopping for churches here. I also found it to be an ungodly place. Deborah, I think it depends upon, well, actually, I'm going to agree with you there. Why do you think I stay home and do online church with my buddies now? My church experience there that Anderson would probably rejoice over and call them all reprobates and apostates and various things was I had a wonderful church here in Tamarindo that was linked to the Missionary Baptists out of Texas. I loved it. I loved the pastor. The pastor was a very chill guy who sprinkled his sermons with surfing terms like "dude," and he just made me laugh. With some of the things he did. But let me tell you something about him. He was very godly and he was very, very, very humble. The opposite of Anderson. He also had his theology degree from Princeton University, which I know Anderson cannot boast that he has a theology degree from anywhere near as legitimate as that. I love the pastor, but I was one of the few up there that did. When you're in a community where there are a lot of wealthy people, okay? Wealthy Americans, I should say, because the Ticos not so much. But wealthy Americans, okay, and they're claiming to be Christians and they're taking over churches. This pastor stood up to that. How badly do you stand up to it? Like, well, one time we were having worship team rehearsal. Somebody brought in their dog, and I was horizontal with sudden anaphylaxis, and he said, "That's it. We're banning dogs from the building." And I loved that. So all these other people who were members of that church, they had a lot of feckless billionaires. I'm just going to call it what it is. Feckless billionaires, okay, that wanted to control the church, could not control our wonderful pastor, could not control him at all. These were people that came from the States where they were used to being the big fish in the small pond, calling all the damn shots with their money. They got here and they were in a group of millionaires and billionaires, mostly at this church, and they could no longer call the shots. They were no longer a big fish in a small pond. They were a little fish in a very big pond. And I saw all kinds of unbiblical nonsense that they wrapped as biblical. The billionaire crowd is what I'm talking about now. One of them started a whispering campaign against the pastor. And he tried to approach me on it, and I was kinda like, "No, what you're saying and doing is wrong. If you have a problem with the pastor over all of us, you shouldn't be coming to me and whispering about it. You should go straight to the pastor and say, 'Hey, I have this problem with you. Let's talk it out.'" That's biblical. That's what you do when you're in church fellowship with people. You got a problem with someone, you either shut up about it or you talk to them, but you don't drag other people into it, okay? So he tried to drag other people into it. He did drag a few other people into it, some that I would consider not as mature Christians. They all gossiped about this guy, and the gossip got outrageous. And I felt bad for my pastor friend. I loved him. I loved his wife and his kids. Can you guess what happened? Enough whispering got to the board of directors, half of whom didn't even live in Costa Rica. And there were threats of, I'll pull my money. And suddenly the board turns against the pastor and they come after him and defrock him in one weekend. I almost left the church and I should have. I should have just got up and left because I saw what they did to a good man. He now lives in the States. He's studying to be a nurse. He has left the pastorate altogether. I wouldn't even be surprised if he is completely left Christianity from what I have gathered. I wouldn't be a bit surprised, and my heart breaks for him. So here we are 3 years later, and they still don't have a pastor. It's still a hot mess of stupid up there. They decided well, and it was funny because the feckless billionaire that started all this, he turned around and left. He's just like noped his way out and ran off to another church he took over, twisted that pastor to giving fire and brimstone sermons, had a falling out with them and ran off. So now he's home churching it, talking about starting his own church. That dude needs to start his own church and be away from humans. But that is what happens here. That happens here more often than not, I've noticed. Yeah, my husband goes to a local church. I don't go to them. It's a different one that our original church spun out of, and I won't go even though I like the pastor. I like the pastor a lot. I don't like any of the feckless billionaires that are going there and they're constant shouting out of their beliefs that are just awful. And the pastor won't bring them in. Example, during COVID, well, after COVID, but not by a lot, I was there with my husband. I keep mentioning I have mastocytosis. When I'm exposed to a bad allergen, the N95 mask goes on. I have a pile of Vlog masks that are N95 that have filters on them, specifically if I'm having problems breathing and I'm wheezing on my electric bong. And I'm trapped there. I can't go anywhere. So out comes the Vlog mask. I put it on. In about 20 minutes, I had no less than 4 people come up to me and tell me that I am defaming the word of God and beating up on Jesus and spitting on the altar by donning a mask. The very last one, I hissed out. I lost my temper. I hissed out, "Hey, a-hole, I have mastocytosis asthma. That is why I'm wearing a mask, not because of any COVID restrictions." They shouldn't beat somebody up for that. And here we got states where cities where it's against the law to wear one, and I don't know what I'm gonna do because I'm one of those people, like I said, I'm sensitive as a canary down the damn coal mine, and it doesn't take much sometimes. And it's easier for me to whip out the Vlog mask and whip out the nebulizer, the portable one, and take a treatment than it is for me to make a big scene and leave. Let me apologize yesterday about how unsharp I was when I was reading through my notebooks. When I started talking yesterday, I felt fine. But within Oh, I don't even remember. That's how bad I got yesterday. Within not long at all, my blood pressure tanked, and it tanked hard. I was doing readings yesterday afternoon where it was like 70 over 40. Thank you, mastocytosis. I am taking something for my blood pressure that is supposed to hold it in a range, not on either side. Range, because I've had a stroke because of the mastocytosis. And on the other hand, you have a chance of having a stroke too if it's real low. So mine tanked yesterday. And at the same time, my oxygen levels tanked because I'm not getting enough blood to the brain. So I'm measuring oxygen levels and coming up with negatives, not good ratings. And I just kept on going. What had changed? Well, I keep having this conversation with my doctors here. And by the way, medicine here is the best about changing up my allergen pills. They don't like the fact that the one that I take is one of the oldest ones. I take it in mastocytosis doses. I'm just going to say that. And they say, you've got to give it a rest. Try something new. Well, I've tried every pill and I have side effects. I tried a new one yesterday, not having any side effects, but it's not working. So I believe whatever was happening yesterday was a side effect of them switching up my meds. And it's so silly because I take a chemotherapy pill every day for the mastocytosis. I have my various drugs I take for the asthma, the allergies. I have the pill I take for the nerve damage from the stroke. And it's a lot. It's a lot of pills. I'm just going to say that. But it's a delicate dance to keep everything in balance. That is the disadvantage here. In the States, I had a doctor that was expert at mastocytosis who researched at the National Allergy and Asthma Foundation in Baltimore. Here, not so much. Nobody really knows about it. I talked to my doctor here. I got my doctor to call my doctor in the States, and never the twain shall meet. So I have to be more proactive about my health here. And like I said, it does play into the whole thing with the churches here. Churches that are willing to harm me to keep a visitor and getting 30 kinds of shade thrown at me by a pile of feckless billionaires who don't have any clue what I'm doing or why I'm doing it. Who, if you do moan about what you're going through to them because they've thrown shade at you, will start, oh, have you tried essential oils? Have you tried massage? Have you tried yoga on the beach? Have you tried sound bathing? Have you tried blah, 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 blah? Yes. I've often said I'd eat a bowl of cat turds to heal this damn thing, and I would. But their opinion does not matter to me. They are not very Christian as far as I'm concerned. Deborah, you're right about that. Here's what my son said one time that I think about Costa Rica, and I think this doubly about religious people here. After meeting people that I know through here and various things, I am a medical mess. But here's the thing, I know how to keep myself pretty healthy, so I do what I need to do to get it healthy. I just stay away from those negative, feckless billionaires. My son said, "Everyone here is running away from something." And I kinda laughed and said, "You are right about that. Everybody here is running away from something." Sometimes that something is laws that are controlling them in the US that they think they can blow off here, okay? They think that, they're here, they don't have to obey those laws, and I've seen so many crazy things happen here because of that. And, many people run up against the laws here because they think, "Hey, it's crazy like my vacation, and it's a Central American country, I can do what I want." Slam up against the wall. hard. And a lot of them come here not knowing that vaccination for children is mandatory, homeschooling is outlawed. It's hard to own a gun here. It's very difficult and very expensive, and I'm talking about owning a single gun, not owning an entire militia. They are very strict on the way money is handled here because they're trying to nip the drug trade in the bud. There is still a lot of corruption here where people will ask you, the police will pull you over and ask you for a bribe, and I will just say no and drive on off the few times I've been approached. I just don't do it because I know they're not going to arrest me. And there is also the arrogance of knowing you're a rich gringo and nobody is going to touch you here. Even if you break a law, you might get slapped on the hand. So it breeds some really unhealthy things going on, really unhealthy, crazy things going on. And almost all of them that I know that are like that claim they're good Christians. So I would rather hang out online, go to cyber church with my ex-evangelical friends, do my worshiping here alone at my house, hang out with my few good Christian friends that I have made here. They're decent people, like my friend Joanna. Okay. She is wonderful. She's British. She's also a good Christian. I appreciate her in so many different ways. And I have other friends like that too. And you're right, I gotta avoid Walmart, even though sometimes you end up going there to the evil conglomerate because there is no better option sometimes. Unless you want to go to PriceSmart and have to buy a pack of toothbrushes where there might be 47 pieces. So it's a balancing act. And like I said, at one point, I'm probably going to branch out about talking about that, the Costa Rican thing. But the Costa Rican thing and the American religion thing mixed together is just bad. It's bad all the way around. I've yet to see a church that I really like or approve of here. In fact, I wish my iPad was near here. I had taken notes the other day of some crazy American church billboards I've seen near here. Old drunk retired men looking for young ticos. There's that too. And then there's old non-drunken, oh, maybe he's drunken, I don't know, men looking for Tico girls at the church my husband goes to. And if I could have gotten a picture, I would have. But he says, I'm Mennonite. Put your camera phone away because I was trying to take a picture one day of him. He used to wear a button up shirt, no lie. He had taken a Marks a lot and had written on the back of the shirt, ladies, I am single. I already have 3 sisters. Um, I forgot something else. But at the end he put his phone number. And he walked around like that all the time. I'd be looking at that going, my Lord. And oh, he said he didn't need a friend. That was it. He needed a lover. And he was wearing this around the pastor, and the pastor didn't pull him aside and say what I would have expected a decent pastor to say, which is basically, hey, if you want to walk around with that shirt on, do it elsewhere. Please don't do that here. That's going to offend some people. And it's not exactly biblical either. So he was the same way. He finally had to go back because he didn't bring enough money. He wasn't a craven billionaire like a lot of them. Titus 2 Jesus girl. Okay, so left over that. Susanna is originally from Munich, Bavaria. She's not from the former GDR. Greetings from Germany. Greetings to Germany. She was originally from a former satellite nation of Soviet Union before she got to Bavaria, so she's not entirely German. She tells people that, but she also talks about that. She was born in East Germany. She was born over there, and she spent some of her childhood in one of the Eastern countries. For some reason, I thought it was some other nation like Bulgaria or something. I wasn't even thinking that it was Germany. Hungary. Hungary, that was it. I was thinking it's Hungary. So that explains a lot of her theology and a lot of the things she's come up with. And, I feel sorry for her, even knowing that she abused her children, because I think if you do that stuff to your children, you got to be doing it out of some kind of deep unhappiness yourself. And now we know Stephen does that to her, and that's just evil. I don't care how he wraps it. Oh, it's just BDSM. Stay out of my bedroom. I don't think so. I think if he had left her the happy atheist in Bavaria that she seemed to be, she'd be in a world's different place than she is right now. And I can tell you something. I've spent some time in East Germany before the wall came down, and some of the Eastern Bloc nations. Not good. I can see how she would have come out with all kinds of weird ideas. I'm going to go, speaking of weird ideas, because like I said, they are switching on my meds around, and I can sort of feel that the blood pressure is starting to tank again. Maybe I should eat something super salty. I don't know. And the great irony of this is all happening. We're having problems with my husband's health, and we're having to run around to the doctors a lot. I don't excuse Susanna, but she's lived a lot of hurt. I have some understanding. Hey, but maybe that would be a better word for me to say is understanding. I have some understanding of her. I always kind of liked her. I've changed my mind since the allegations have come out, obviously. But of all the people that I would write about, I would probably leave her alone a lot more than anybody else because she wasn't entirely toxic from the what she was putting out. But then again, that's her facade. Okay. That's her mask or disguise. And that's unfortunate that so many Christians can't live who they are. Because we sure were not designed to be smiling robots. We have feelings, we have emotions, we have thoughts, and we're not all going to agree. And that's cool. I'm not, I am not that way. And that's what's so funny about being non judgmental. And so many of them have thrown shade at me, saying, oh, you're not biblical. Well, let me tell you something. I've mostly been a stay at home mother when I had children. I'm usually pretty subservient on most things. Well, not subservient. Let me put that back. I submit more than I don't. If it's important and I see that it's important to my husband, even though I may think, feel whatever a different way, a lot of times I'll just say, okay, you do you, boo, because it's the best thing you can do. She is rude and nasty in person. Now I know she was jealous of seeing me with her real husband. Deborah, that could well be. That could well be because we can see what kind of relationship they have. Stephen wanted a foreign wife who was not going to give him any grief at all. Obviously, that didn't quite work out. She's quite this strong personality, which I like. And I like people who have strong personalities. That was one interesting thing the other night I've not mentioned is I was asked to do discussion debate with a pile of people in the Tamarindo area, and we did this the other night at a bar, and one of the people was extremely conservative. She went after me for holding different opinions than my husband. I kinda laughed about it. I was like, there's nothing in the Bible that says you have to believe the exact same way as your husband. There's nothing. There's not one thing about that. Do you really think that all those women that followed Jesus, that our husbands did too? I just don't see it. None of us are biblical. Even the characters of the Bible were not biblical. Well, that's what I'm gonna leave you with this. This is what I always said about the Bible, and I still say it. It's like everybody's screwing up left, right, and center in the Bible. It gives me hope. It gives me hope. It gives me hope that I don't have to be perfect, that I could just be. I could just be who I am because nobody's perfect. I'm certainly not. I'm the first person to admit that. Okay, you guys, I am gonna go ahead and go. I didn't mean to talk this long. I will see all y'all later.